What do you know about Songtrust? Have you ever heard of them? Well, I had heard of them. I had heard that they help you find more royalties around the world, especially from your streaming, but also anything having to do with song royalties. But I had questions. Do you get involved with sound exchange? Do you do neighboring rights? What all do you do? Do you get involved with content ID? These are the questions that I wanted answered. And guess what? I got them answered. And I think you're really going to like this interview with Songtrust. I asked some really tough questions. I'm happy to finally be talking. And when I say finally, I've been trying to get in touch with Songtrust for a while, just because I like to go to the horse's mouth for information about a company and about a service. And so I am happy to be with Renée Buchholtz today of Songtrust. And Renee, thanks so much for finding time to talk to me and getting back to me, because I think this is going to be a really helpful interview for a lot of people who are, first of all, need your services and don't know if they need it, or they've heard of Songtrust and everybody thinks everything is a scam on the internet. So we need to really kind of just get the truth out about all of, and that's what I try to do on my channel. Anything related to music and money, I'm trying to figure out how to plainly put it for people to understand it. And so tell me a little bit about what you do at Songtrust. What's your job there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for, meeting with me today. I've
My
been
pleasure.
excited, looking forward to this also. So I am the Associate Director of Marketing at Songtrust. So I've been here, oh gosh, summer will be 5 years. So yeah, it's been really great to, help build our strategy out, gain, just brand visibility, right? When I started, Songtrust was definitely not as known as it is today. So, you know, getting to be a part of that growth and help develop, our marketing plans over the way has been super rewarding.
How big is Songtrust? What kind of company is Songtrust size-wise, and where are you guys located?
Yeah, so our headquarters are in New York. We have two other offices in the US. So we have Los Angeles and Nashville. Our parent company is Downtown Music Holdings, which you might have heard of before. So, some of the other companies under Downtown are Downtown Music Publishing, CD Baby,
Oh, that's right.
Fuga.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, as well as a number of other ones. Downtown is always looking strategically to grow and ultimately be the top service provider for creators, musicians. We used to own copyrights, and a few years ago, Downtown sold off any copyright ownership so that they could solely focus on services.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how many people work at Songtrust as far as you know?
I think
Ish.
around 50 or so people. We have some departments that work downtown as well as Songtrust. So some of the technology and product side of things
Cool.
technically sit under downtown, but you know, service Songtrust as well.
Gotcha.
CD Baby had CD Baby Pro, which was
Right.
basically the publishing add-on, and that was all powered by Songtrust.
Oh,
So
was it?
yeah, we were
Okay.
doing that backman administration for them. They recently got rid of CD Baby Pro and have a new offering called CD Baby Boost, which
Right.
definitely recommend doing your research and looking into kind of like the
But
differences between Pro and how that works.
but that's not associated with you guys anymore.
Nope,
Good
nope.
to know. Okay, well there's that's something good to know.
Yep.
All this changes so often and so fast in this business, and
Oh, I know.
all the independent artists and indie players and people in this world, everything has changed. That's why a channel like this continues to be something that I need to do, because stuff just changes so much all the time, and every month there's something new. But and that's one reason why I want to talk to you today, is so we could, you know, really find out where Songtrust is in 2024 and what the services they offer, because it's a little confusing when you're looking at it. You guys have so much on your site. Your site is packed with information, but there's almost so much that it can get a little confusing. And I want to try our best today to kind of simplify that so people can get a really good sense of how to work with Songtrust and why they should work with Songtrust, and who should work with Songtrust. So here's what I want to do. This is a little weird. I want to start with what you don't do, because I just found this out through our emails recently, and to me, this helps clear the kind of the slate really fast. And so let's start with what you don't do. And I think if I understand it right, what you don't do is a lot of rights owner royalties. Is that would you say that's correct?
Stepping back a little bit, right? When you think about a song, right? We like to say that there are two parts of a song.
Right.
You have the composition side, which is made of the underlying lyrics, the melody, and then you have the recording side.
Right.
And so that's the kind of unique recording that you can actually listen to.
Yeah,
right?
and someone owns that recording, and someone is the composer and owns the composition, the song rights.
So oftentimes you have a different recording owner than composition owner, right? So Songtrust does not handle anything on the recording side. We are solely focused on the composition, also known as the publishing side.
Okay, great. And so that means there are things that you don't get involved with, like sound exchange. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And also neighboring rights. Not talking about that.
Yep.
Also, probably sync rights, sync royalties that come back to an owner of a recording, correct?
So sync can actually generate royalties on both sides of the song.
All right.
So Songtrust can help collect sync royalties on the publishing side, not the other part though.
So, but if I, like, for instance, my library sends me a check for sync royalties from the library.
So if you're working with an exclusive library, then Songtrust would not be handling sync collection there.
Great. Good to know. That's really where I was going with that. A lot of people who pay attention to this channel are involved in sync licensing in that way with exclusive deals with libraries. So it's good for them to know that that's not one of the things we're going to be talking about. Also, what about, like, if a composer has a song on sheet music sites and has that kind of stuff? Do you guys get involved in that at all? Or again, that seems to be, to me, something that is a direct relationship between the composer and Hal Leonard or somebody like that.
We don't have like specific licenses in place with sheet music publishers, but sheet music publishers could license through Songtrust if they want to. If you want to get your music printed and have Songtrust collect royalties for you. In terms of like lyric sites, Songtrust does have direct agreements in place to help you collect royalties when, someone's checking
like
out
Music
your
Match and stuff like that. Okay, gotcha.
And Lyric Find,
Yes, got you. In a similar way, when someone puts their song on DistroKid or CD Baby or any place like that, and that company does not have any kind of deal with Songtrust, is that also something you're not involved in?
So distribution is on the recording side. So that is not a part of what we do at all. So if you are working with a distributor, that will not interfere at all, of you signing up with a company like Songtrust or another publisher.
This is all very good. This is all letting people know what you're not going to be putting your hands in. As far as Songtrust does not have, is not involved in your distribution. Songtrust is not involved in your neighboring rights or your sound exchange and neighboring rights. It's a whole other video. I've got a second video on neighboring rights coming out soon because it's so confusing for people. But and then sound exchange is non-interactive streaming, so that's its own thing. Although there are parts of Pandora that are on the on your side, right? They're on the royalty side. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll
So,
get there in a minute.
okay.
I just
Don't
because
get ahead of
Sound
ourselves.
Exchange they also collect from Pandora and iHeartRadio, but some of those dial back into your royalties and stuff like that. So,
Yep.
but as far as sales money from things and from people's band camps and things like that, I assume you guys aren't involved with band camp at all and anything like that. So merch or anything like that. All right. Very good. That's exactly what I wanted to knock out of the way first. So we could just get
Yep.
that out of the way and people would be like, oh, okay, I thought they would get into that too. No, that's not part of this whole deal. The best explanation of what you are, from my understanding and talking with other companies in Nashville that do this as well, is what we would call a publishing administration company. Would you say that's a good example of what Songtrust is?
Spot on. Yep.
Spot on. Yeah. And this is a company that exists so that the people who are making music and getting royalties from their song, from the song side, they don't have to like deal with 1,000 different things. And this especially becomes a big deal for, larger artists who are writers, and their songs are all sorts of stuff is happening with their songs, and we'll talk about all that stuff. But let's move into what you do cover and what you do focus on, which is the song side, and explain the song side as far as, before we get into performance or mechanicals or anything like that. Explain the song side to people as far as the way you guys see it.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, right, you have those two halves of a song. So, the composition side or the publishing side that Songtrust deals with is related to, yeah, the lyrics, the melody, really that underlying music. So, Songtrust works with songwriters, producers. We represent publishers, and we also work with labels or any other company that may take on ownership of publishing or composition rights. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
Yeah. So you want to start with performance royalties?
Yeah. So performance royalties, for anyone who does not know, are generated when a song is performed publicly. And, in the traditional sense, performed publicly meaning in a live performance, right? At a venue, that sort of thing. It could also be at a bar, at a restaurant. You're hearing it over the speaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
Most commonly today, when your music is streamed online. So, Spotify
Mm-hmm.
generates performance royalties.
Mm-hmm. As well as radio, of course, and television.
Radio, yep. Yeah, performance royalties are kind of the most common royalty type on the publishing side that you hear about.
Okay. And you guys are collecting that. And here's, I think, the important distinction. Most people who are getting that collected think about, television in the U.S., bars in the U.S., all this kind of stuff in the U.S. But I think a big part of what, if I'm understanding it correctly with Songtrust, is you also chase all this around the entire world. Talk about your PRO collection, or
Yeah.
my confusion and a lot of people's confusion, I think, is how you work with PROs and how if someone has a PRO, they're like, hey, if I got a PRO, if I'm with BMI, why do I need Songtrust involved in
Right.
that? And give us the real
Absolutely.
reasons why you think that Songtrust
Yeah.
is needed there.
Yeah, and that's a question we get very, very often. Probably one of the top ones we
I
receive.
bet.
So PROs, performing rights organizations, are focused on collecting your performance royalties generated domestically,
Okay.
basically. So an ASCAP, a BMI would be focused on collecting your performance royalties generated within the US.
Hmm.
Um, a company like PRS is the UK based PRO, so they're
Hmm.
focused on collecting performance royalties generated within the UK, right? So if you are registered with, say, BMI in the US, you are essentially set up to collect those performance royalties generated in the US. But there are performance royalties that your PRO is not collecting. They are not proactively registering your work and collecting overseas where performance royalties are being generated.
Hmm.
So, when it comes to performance royalties alone, if your music is being played, being streamed, being used in the US only, then, you're off to a great start. But if your music is being used overseas, and I'm sure we'll get to this in a second, if your music is earning mechanical royalties, then your PRO is not collecting that for you.
Right. What about the international royalties, that the international performances in audio and audiovisual that BMI pays me? Am I getting lucky with that? Because I get a lot of those because I have a lot of, through library work and through a lot of sync licensing, I have stuff being played in Germany. I have a music supervisor who loves me in Germany, apparently, because I'm in all these German reality shows as far as all the songs that I do and Christmas songs and all these other songs. And sometimes I see that reflected on my BMI statement, and sometimes I don't. So is that because there's just a supply chain problem getting it back to BMI, or is that because it's not a proactive thing?
We kind of like to explain it as proactive versus kind of just like passive collection, right?
Gotcha.
So many PROs have reciprocal agreements with other PROs around the world.
Like GEMA in Germany.
Yes. So when you have a reciprocal agreement, it's a little bit more of a passive approach. You may get lucky and, get some of those international royalties, but it's not guaranteed. So Songtrust uses direct agreements with all of these different PROs to make sure that your work is registered where you are earning royalties.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. And that's probably not just with the PROs of those countries, but what a lot of people don't realize is there are also CMOs of those countries.
Collective management organizations.
Yeah, and we don't really have that in the U.S. So a CMO is, we think of PROs all the time because we talk about that here in the States, and we know BMI and ASCAP and CSAC, and we're familiar with that. But talk about CMOs and your work with them as well.
Yeah, that's another great question. So basically, the main difference between a PRO and a CMO is PROs focus only on performance royalty collection, whereas CMOs collect both performance and mechanical royalties. So like you mentioned, the US, they don't have organizations like this that are collecting both. So you'd need to, register with ASCAP or BMI to collect your performance, and then a mechanical rights organization to collect the mechanical royalties. But most countries, territories overseas use just a CMO to collect both your performance and your mechanical royalties from your publishing, from composition. So Songtrust has, those direct agreements with not only PROs overseas, but CMOs as well.
And what people don't understand is it's a mess out there. There's some countries that have a PRO and a CMO, and some countries that have a CMO that does both. And is that right?
Yeah. And some countries have multiple CMOs or PROs, and some of them have all these restrictions to become a member, or, a lot of them have their own fees to sign up to, right? So there's definitely some boundaries as an independent artist to directly registering your music at these different societies where your music might be earning, right?
Right. So as far as the song rights, what you are doing is trying to make sure you're collecting those performance royalties all around the world at all of these companies. Is that one of your main jobs, is to connect with as many of the CMOs and PROs as you can to collect these royalties?
Yeah, we have an internal team who their sole job is developing these relationships with societies. Every society also has kind of like their own processes for registering, tracking, and collecting payments, right? So, our team does a lot of work to kind of understand what those different processes look like and streamline it for publishing owners, so you don't have to understand all of that and reformat.
What a publishing admin company does, they administrate things that you don't want to get involved with, or don't have the time or knowledge to get involved with.
Exactly.
So before we get into mechanical royalties, my thought was, for people who are getting performance rights from like television and stuff like that. Should I assume then, as a BMI member, let's say, who is active in the sync licensing world and putting stuff on television in France and in Germany and in all over the place, the UK, and there's stuff being played in a lot of places. Is it possible I'm receiving a fraction of what I would get if it was better, like chased after, so to speak?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we always say, your money is not just going to find its way to you. A lot of the time, you need to take some proactive measures, maybe registering with a publishing administrator to make sure that your work is being registered where it's earning. So, if your music is being placed in TV in Germany, right? BMI is not going out of its way to look for that money for you, right? So the
Gotcha.
best thing you can do is make sure your songs are registered at GEMA in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to sync, basically, production companies are responsible for delivering cue sheets to the local PRO or CMO.
Local, yeah.
So, so yeah, if your music isn't registered there, even though they might have a cue sheet, they don't really know who that money belongs to and how to get it to you.
And that cue sheet doesn't always get forwarded to BMI, probably.
Not necessarily.
Okay, well, that's starting to answer my final question. We'll get to later, but because while I want this to be helpful for everybody, I'm really doing this quite selfishly, just to make sure that I understand I'm not missing music income, because this whole channel is built around me making music income and talking about it. And so, yeah, I want to know if I
Yeah.
need to be with Songtrust, because this is a question I've been asking for years. But now let's move on to mechanical royalties, starting in the U.S., and how those are collected and the companies that collect that and that you work with.
Yeah. So mechanical royalties are generated when your song is reproduced. What that means, back in the day, it meant when your song was physically being
Mm-hmm.
reproduced, right?
Yeah.
CDs, vinyls, that physical kind of reproduction.
Mm-hmm.
Today, being reproduced can also mean digitally. So streams as well as digital downloads also generate mechanical royalties.
Right.
So going back to, the Spotify stream, right? They generate both a performance royalty and a mechanical royalty.
Right.
And so in the US, right, since your PRO is not collecting those mechanical royalties, there are other organizations, we call them mechanical rights organizations or MROs, that are handling that collection. So you might have heard of HFA,
Harry
Music
Fox.
Reports. Yep. Harry Fox. Most
And music
recently,
reports.
the MLC,
Mm-hmm.
the Mechanical Licensing Collective. So they are solely focused on the collection of mechanical royalties generated within the US, once again.
Just for my clarification, I am not with Harry Fox. That's probably the only one I'm not with that exists that I've just joined. But and probably not. I don't know how many people are going to license my music at Harry Fox. So that's one reason why I haven't worried about it. Music Reports is pretty proactive. They're like, hey, we can get you on in the Peloton system or something like that, And so I'm with that to an extent, although, like everybody else, I've got my 3-cent checks from them. Of course, and I've been with the MLC, and I don't make much more there either, because I don't really focus on streaming like some people do. But the MLC, the Mechanical Licensing Collective, I believe that's what it's called, right? Mechanical
Yep.
License Collective. So the MLC is, would you say they're your biggest mechanical royalties collector right now in the U.S. that you guys deal with?
Yeah, they are definitely up there for us, right? They've done a really great job of collecting all the unpaid mechanical royalties in the past, verifying songwriter data and matching registrations to figure out who that money goes to. when they first started, there was multiple millions of dollars in unpaid
Yeah.
mechanical royalties that were owed to
Hmm.
songwriters. Oftentimes in the past, when there, and still today, when there's money sitting at societies that, they're unsure of who to pay it out to, normally they'll wait about 2 to 3 years to hold on to that money. And after that point, they distribute those royalties to uh, basically the top earners,
Right.
right? So the Mechanical Licensing Collective, the MLC, has been just doing a ton of work into data validation to make sure that money isn't just sitting there, that it's going to
Gotcha.
the rightful owners.
And they are pretty much only for streaming of mechanicals, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. Because you've got music reports, which deals with certain companies. But Harry Fox is more like if you want to clear a song, you do that through Harry Fox. And then there's the other company. I don't know
Easy
who.
song listening, or I think
Yeah, I cleared a lot of things for clients through there. But and Harry Fox, they work song file on Harry Fox and Easy Song Licensing or whatever it's called. I've used both of those because sometimes you can't get a distributor to put a cover out if you don't get some kind of clearance like that, basically a license. So Harry Fox is still probably the main place people go to, and you guys deal with them for clearances of licenses and things like that.
yeah. So I mean, Songtrust has direct agreements in place with HFA, with MLC, with music reports. And oftentimes, if, these organizations have deals in place with others, our clients get to leverage those additional licenses for their music. So, you talk about registering with BMI, registering with HFA, music reports, which is definitely one way to go,
And music reports and song, and to be honest, Sound Exchange, they are both a lot of spreadsheet work. You better be ready to put some spreadsheets together to send them so that they have all the info on your songs. And that I haven't even got to all that. I am falling behind on my spreadsheet work to get stuff to them so I can get all the pennies, all the dollars, all that kind of stuff. I mean, I am pretty good about registering at BMI, but Sound Exchange, there's going to be some work involved to on the spreadsheet to send stuff to them. Same with music reports; they require these kind of sheets that you got to turn in and all that kind of stuff. What else mechanical in the U.S. If nothing else? Where do we go then internationally with mechanicals?
Yeah, so internationally, right? I think we've covered the main US mechanical based societies.
Right.
So, overseas, some of the kind of key mechanical rights organizations are MCPS, which is the UK based society. Oh gosh,
GVL.
Australia, I know they have AMCOS, AMCOS, that is the Australian based.
You're talking about mechanical rights collectors, not CMOs, right?
Yeah,
MROs,
exactly.
basically.
Yeah, I mean, again, most countries around the world have CMOs that handle both.
Yeah.
So there's not as many mechanical rights organizations overseas.
I think the main thing people need to know is that around the world, just like the U.S. has its peculiar mechanical companies, MLC, Harry Fox, Music Reports, and our PROs, ASCAP, BMI, CSAC. And around the world, every country has their, and some countries have multiple organizations, PROs, CMOs, different things like that. And it's just a matter of being connected with all those and having agreements with all those. Here's a question for you, just for performance and mechanicals combined. How much percentage would you say for your, and I take it you have international clients as well as US clients? How much percentage is international to US? All combined, like all mechanical and performance that you guys collect. Would you know that?
The majority of our clients are US based.
Mm-hmm.
We do represent plenty of, songwriters and other rights holders overseas.
how much is collected around the world versus U.S. We tend to, here in the U.S. we are very U.S. centric. We think we own the world. It's kind of like you New Yorkers. You think basically the island is the center of the universe. I've worked with many New Yorkers, and I've been there, and it kind of is. But I love New York City. But all that to say, I take it there is a lot of income to get from around the world, especially for people involved in sync licensing who are getting stuff synced in other countries and stuff like that, and getting stuff played on radio and streaming in other countries. Would you say that there's a good amount that people don't know is out there?
Totally. 100%.
Okay. Good to know. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about the song royalty, the main two song royalties that we've known about pretty much, or at least we should have known about for our whole lives, which is performance rights and mechanical royalties. What I want to talk about next is content ID, because this is becoming a nice income for me on a yearly basis at least. And I have a lot of stuff in libraries that then, and stuff that is just heard and found on Content ID. How does Songtrust deal with Content ID? How are you guys involved with that?
Yeah.
And let's
So,
explain that real quick, just in case anybody watching this doesn't have any idea what Content ID is.
right. So, another outside of performance and mechanical royalties, kind of those, standard placements, there's also micro sync royalties, right? So these are royalties generated when your song is used alongside video, basically.
Yes.
So sync, right, that we've talked about is when your music is used alongside more traditional media like TV, film, commercials, that sort of thing. But microsync focuses more on user generated content. So think YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So when your music is used on those platforms, you are generating royalties that are out there for you to collect. So that's where Content ID kind of comes into play in that micro sync realm.
Gotcha. And there are song royalties for you to collect there?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you have recording and composition royalties that are generated from microsync.
Okay. So who pays those? Who pays each of those? Like, I know you guys get into the song part of that. Who pays the recording
Yes.
part of that?
So the recording part, some distributors may offer collection from there. There's other companies out there. I know you mentioned Identify. There's companies like AdRev also
Yep.
collecting. So yeah, AdRev is actually now called Fuga UGC, which is actually a downtown music company.
Oh, okay.
They handle the recording side of microsync
Okay.
collection. Identify, I believe, handles both the recording and the composition side. So
Gotcha. Makes
definitely,
sense.
again, do your research to have a full understanding of what the company you're working with is collecting and isn't collecting on your behalf.
Okay. So you have a client and you are collecting performance royalties for them and mechanical royalties for them around the world. You're chasing all that down. You're hunting it down, you're killing it, and you're bringing it back because no one else is. And especially like I'm sure there are weirdos out there in the music thing that have gone out and they've tried to get all these different PRS, and they've tried to join everything to try to get everything. But that's going to be 1% of musicians, if that, it's going to be like I said, the weirdos. No offense, weirdos, but it's going to be the musicians who are like, I'm going to find every penny. But most people are not going to do this. So we know how you do that with performance and mechanicals. How do you do that with Content ID through this company that's now part of Downtown, or you do it
So
another
we
way?
actually do it independently. So when it comes to like Meta and TikTok, we have direct agreements in place with them to collect publishing royalties generated from them. And then we also have with YouTube. So YouTube is actually the one source where you can opt in or opt out of as a Songtrust client. If you're opted in, once you add ISRCs, once you add recordings to the songs you're adding, we automatically send them through YouTube's Content ID system. And how YouTube's Content ID system works is they use that song metadata to basically match the composition to the recording and track where it's being used in videos on the platform.
So you don't have a listening part. It's more based on the ISRCs.
Yeah, it's all through YouTube. They handle it, that tracking and collection, and pay it out through us to our clients. Going through Google, right? They've really nailed it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you'd like to use Songtrust for YouTube monetization on the publishing side, that's an easy opt-in, and we'll handle that fully for you, as well as Meta and TikTok.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So what else am I missing on the song royalties side after performance rights, mechanical royalties, and content ID? What else is there? Am I missing anything?
That's pretty much covering it all. Clearly, there's a lot of organizations that you can work with if you'd like.
But I think the real bonus and the real magic of Songtrust, from what I'm hearing, because this is what I've been trying to find out. What does Songtrust do for me as a working composer / producer who is putting stuff out left and right on microsync, on sync, on streaming, on all of these places? On the front of your site, it says song monitoring. When it says song monitoring, what does it mean by that on your site?
A lot of musicians assume that when you register your music for publishing, right, at PRO, at Harry Fox, with Songtrust, that you're automatically going to get royalties, right? Unless your music is being played, there's not yet royalties out there to collect. Right. So when you first add a song to Songtrust, we have a team that is weekly, basically, monitoring your songs for royalty activity, for streaming activity, so that once it is, we know it's time to register your works at the societies where it's earning.
And so when someone joins Songtrust, there is probably a lot that happens over the course of that first amount of time where you are beginning to register them as writers. And do you register yourself as publisher? How do you guys register all that? What's the process there?
Yeah. So, there's kind of two options. We have some clients of ours that have their own publishing entity. And so when we are registering music on behalf of those clients, we will add their publishing entity information as well. If someone doesn't have their own personal publishing entity, then Songtrust basically acts as your publisher at Society. So Songtrust will appear on your song registrations at, ASCAP or BMI.
And I take it that you do not get involved. Like, for instance, I sign an album with an exclusive library. Songtrust won't be involved in that. Is that
No.
Probably because they're the publisher in that case, and they want the publishing, and they don't want anybody else involved in the deal. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely important when you're signing those sorts of exclusive agreements to make sure you're not registering them with, someone else like Songtrust.
Kind of double registering.
Exactly. And because what that ultimately does, it may cause duplicate registrations at societies. Those societies are confused. They're like, we don't know who to pay. And ultimately your payments just get kind of paused until that sort of situation is resolved. Gotcha.
Okay, let's move into some money things here that people will want to know. And this is all on your website, but I'll just let you explain it. Cost to join Songtrust.
Yep. So Songtrust, we have a $100 registration fee per songwriter that you'd like us to administer on behalf.
One time.
Yep, one-time payment. And then once we are collecting royalties on your behalf, we have a 15% administration fee on those royalties. That's a flat 15% fee that never
on
changes.
Anything you find and collect.
Yep, yep. So whether it's, performance royalties, mechanical, sync, 15% flat.
So what that would mean is if on a lot of things on my BMI statement, especially stuff that has to do with streaming, most likely, because a lot of the stuff that I have on my BMI statement, I've got it here. That's why I keep looking over here. If I look at my BMI statement, a lot of that stuff is done through my sync stuff, and that's already got a publisher, so that wouldn't be coming to Songtrust. But everything else that is found and heard, and which will there probably be a lot more found than only what is on the BMI statement. I've always just wondered how your money and BMI's money kind of works together. If you know,
Yeah,
if
that's a great question, and this is actually something we have not really dived into yet. So, performance royalties specifically, there are two kind of halves of that, right? Things break down further. So you have what's called a writer share and a publisher share. So working with a PRO directly, oftentimes you're able to access that writer share, no problem. Some societies, you might not be able to access the publisher share without working with a publisher or having your own publishing entity set up. So, if you are working with both Songtrust and BMI, you can expect that your writer share of performance royalties will continue to come directly to you through your PRO,
gotcha.
and your publisher share would come through Songtrust. So your writer share of performance royalties, you're keeping 100% of that.
Okay.
So, you know, money wise on the PRO over Songtrust front, we are really just taking 15% of the publisher share of the royalties since that's what's
Okay.
coming to us.
So since I'm both a writer and a publisher at BMI, then my writer's one that I'm looking at right now wouldn't change. I wouldn't see anything pulled out of there for Songtrust because it's that I get all the writers, just pretty much like all my other
Exactly.
publishing deals.
Yep.
And then my publisher one, though, if there is stuff that is coming from performance or mechanical royalties that are not owned by other publishers, that well they wouldn't be anyway, but any of the my publishing stuff that is from that I just put myself as publisher, and that is what you take the 15% out of. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Exactly.
Well, that's not bad. I don't think that's bad at all. I mean, I because kind of the unwritten rule, it's not unwritten, people talk about it all the time, but you don't give away your writer's side, basically, is what we say in publishing. If you can, don't give your writer's side away, only give a piece of your publishing away, or give your publishing away if you have to, if you're going to, because the publishing side is for the people who are going to go do the work, getting chasing down the royalties, and that's what publishers do. And in some ways, Songtrust is a publisher. I mean, you're a publishing admin company, but in some ways, you're doing the same jobs as a publisher, which is go find the money.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily finding opportunities for the songs, but you are going and finding the money. And
Exactly.
that's one thing that publishers do, and that's why you were called a publishing admin company. So
Yeah.
that's really good to know. And that this is going to be a short. I could just tell you right now, this is going to be short media right here, because this is a thing that you probably don't talk about this enough on your site, and you might even consider making sure that it's up front that we don't get into your writer's royalties. We only
Yeah.
get into the publishing side of royalties. Now, pretend I'm a songwriter that doesn't have a
Yeah.
publishing side at BMI. All I am is the writer.
Writer. Yep.
I get the writing and the publishing kind of by default, right? As a person. So if there was $100 for me, I would get all $100 with if you weren't involved, and no one else was involved, and I would just get the $100. Versus if I have a song and it goes out, my publishing side gets 50 and my writer side gets 50 because I've registered it that way. Does that mean that if someone doesn't have a publishing entity, that your 15% comes out of their just general BMI account, or
If you don't have a publishing entity, right, you are just a songwriter, right? You're
Mhm.
registered at BMI ASCAP as just a writer. Yes, Songtrust would only take the 15% on the publisher side. If you're not working with a publisher or a publishing administrator at all, it's likely that you're not even collecting the publisher share of your performance royalties. You're only collecting the writer share.
So does that mean you're helping them collect publishing share?
Yes.
So
exactly.
you could be bringing people 85% of publishing that they wouldn't normally get, because you're going to take 15% and they would be getting publishing that sometimes they're not getting.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
so there's another case. Check for Songtrust. All right, very good. So let's talk about that. I love all that. That's all great. Let's talk about getting paid from Songtrust. Do you go back into people's catalogs or plays at all, or do you start from the minute you guys start, first of all?
Good question. That's one we get a lot as well. And it's really dependent on the society that we're collecting from. They all have their kind of policies in place when it comes to retroactive royalties, right? So we say generally 2 to 3 years back, but it is very dependent on the society. So, the best thing you can do if you have retroactive royalties out there is get your music registered as soon as you can so that you don't miss out on that money. Because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of societies, once they've held on to it for a few years and they don't know who to pay out, they redistribute that money to their top earners.
The MLC especially. If you've never registered with the MLC and you get with Songtrust, you better believe Songtrust is going to be registering with the MLC, and there might be back stuff due you there.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard, but recently they just announced kind of the final results of the Copyright Royalty Board ruling, which means that there's actually, I think, $400 million in back paid mechanical and performance royalties from 2021 and 2022 that are, expected to now be paid out. So yeah, even if you were registered, there's a potential that you are owed retroactive royalties that will now be paid out to you.
I thought you were going to talk about the Pandora thing, where they've been arguing and fighting with Pandora about their free tier that they haven't been paying mechanicals on, and that whole thing is about to settle too, or has settled. I don't know.
As we've seen, there's constantly legislation and things changing in the music industry, so it's hard to keep track of as an independent, all on your own, right?
Okay, so how often does Songtrust pay? What's your pay schedule, and how do you pay, basically?
Yeah, so Songtrust pays on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
So if we collect royalties during Q1, so January, February, March for you, you will actually be paid out those at the end of the following quarter.
Oh,
So
nice.
Q1 royalties are paid at the end of Q2. So, we have typically it's like the last week of March, June, October, and December that we're paying out our clients.
Okay, so
And we have a $25 minimum payout. So if you're making less than that, and then the next quarter, it adds up to hit that 25, then you'll be paid out at the end of the following quarter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're like the month after BMI. I think BMI pays November and February. We just got paid in February. You guys pay in March? Is that when you
March,
pay?
yeah, end of March.
Okay, so you're like a month past. Cool. It's always good to have alternating quarterly checks.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can pay direct PayPal or check. Is that what I saw on your site?
So yeah, at the moment, I believe we have direct deposit, PayPal.
You send checks out?
No.
Okay, so digital.
Digital. Yeah, I think right now, yeah, direct deposit and PayPal are like
Gotcha.
the main two forms of payment.
Very good. Okay, so here's kind of my big question that I had, but you've answered actually a lot of it, because my question was, and a lot of people's question who are going to watch this is, what if I already do all of this? I already do PRO. I already do MLC. I already do Harry Fox. I already do all these things. Now, the only thing I don't do, I do PRO at BMI. I'm a writer and a publishing company there. I do content ID through Identify. I do MLC. I do sound exchange and music reports, and I'm about to do neighboring rights with a company. So neighboring rights and sound exchange aren't what you are involved in, but I do all of those things. But what I am getting from this interview is that it sounds like there's possibilities that stuff is getting missed. Performance and mechanicals that might be being missed because BMI only casually collects from with these agreements. Is that
Right. Right. Yeah. They'll be using kind of those reciprocal agreements that we talked about, right? So having direct agreements in place with different societies around the world is ideal. You're more likely to collect all that international income that
mm-hmm.
way on the
Yep.
composition, on the publishing side. That international collection, that's where Songtrust will really help someone like yourself, right? Because it sounds like you got your bases covered here in the US.
Well,
Um,
also though with and I guess that's what you have to think about and remember. I'm not that concerned with you getting involved with my BMI account because you're only going to be getting involved personally with me with my publishing account, not with my
so
writer's account.
Yeah, and I mean that's something, that's a good point to bring up. Songtrust, we will help you actually manage your PRO, your catalog at your PRO. So when you add songs to your Songtrust account, you don't even need to go register those at BMI, at the MLC, at Harry Fox. We will handle that for you. So, if you're looking to save time, we're kind of like that, like one stop kind of place for
So
registration.
let's talk about that. Tell me about your registration process with songs.
As mentioned, we have these relationships with PROs, CMOs, as well as, yeah, Meta, TikTok, YouTube in place. So, once you've registered a song in your account, our team sees that it's starting to earn royalties. We will go ahead and register your works again wherever they are earning royalties. So we're not going to go register your song at the Australian Society if your music isn't actually earning any income there. But for
Okay.
the sources where your music is earning, we will handle that for you. So you don't need to be tracking, its usage. See, like, oh, I see a spike in this area, right? Our team handles that, and we'll make sure your music is registered once it is earning in that location.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, the days of registering, I write a song and I put it out on, let's say, libraries like microsync libraries. And I also put it at, usually when I put something out, I have a whole checklist I go through. I put it on microsync libraries. I put it on DistroKid. I do it, all those kind of things. I'll still put it on DistroKid myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
I still have to do that part, but I don't have to go and put it into spreadsheets for MLC. I don't have to go onto my BMI site and do the registration there. What else do I have to do? If I decide to use your content ID system, I don't have to go register at Identify. So it's freeing up at least 3 processes I can see right away,
Yep.
and music reports. I don't have to go do the music reports thing, which is a mess for what feels like not a bad use of time is what music reports feels like. I almost can't make myself do it because it just doesn't feel like a good use of my time. But that's pretty interesting that I can go to one place to register my song at all the
Yep.
places that and so that's where song monitoring, I guess, comes in. You're monitoring, and how are you told? I mean, that seems like a gargantuan job to monitor the world for each one of your clients. How is that done? Or
Yeah,
is
we use a third party to handle that, specialize in that. So that's not something that our team,
I got you.
um, yeah, we don't have those processes in place here. We, go to a specialist to handle that on
Yeah.
our behalf.
I think I know the kind of companies you're talking about. Yeah. And those companies do exist, and you can't really join those companies. You have to really go through a company like yourself, I think, right?
That's a good question. There may be ones out there that you can register with to track. I'm not exactly too
But they're
sure.
going to take a percentage too. So I think that I have asked anything I missed that you want to say as far as Songtrust and what you guys do and to tell the
Yeah.
people out there.
Yeah, I mean, so Songtrust, really, our mission is to empower musicians and rights holders to take control, take ownership of their careers, right? So Songtrust never takes ownership of your songs that you register. You always maintain that. So if you choose to, move on from Songtrust, you're not stuck with Songtrust owning 50% of your song. Like, most traditional publishers do, right? We also do not take creative control of your song in any way. So you're free to seek out those sync deals that make the most sense for you. So, yeah, Songtrust is really a great option if you're looking to maintain control of your music. You are looking to access an extensive publishing collection network, and you still want that creative control, right? I will say as well, like you mentioned in the beginning, we try, really hard to make publishing knowledge accessible, in an
You do a good
industry
job.
where a lot of that information was gate kept, right? A lot of independents got taken advantage of, right? Just not from having a full understanding of how everything works, right? There's all these different royalty types, these different shares, these all different organizations, right? It gets very confusing very fast.
Yeah.
So we want to put the power back in the hands of the rights holders, give you the tools that you need to make educated decisions about your career, right? So you'll notice we have plenty of resources, blog, webinars, all sorts of things on our site. And, as we're talking about the different organizations that you need to be registered with, it actually reminded me of this music royalties checklist that we have. Kind of goes through these, we like to say, four kind of main steps that you should take to collect all of your global royalties. Four steps if you are the owner of both the recording and the publishing. So you can kind of check out that checklist to get an understanding of, which of those four steps do you need to take, in what order, and we have lots of FAQs on there as well. I think that would be,
Absolutely.
super helpful as kind of like a takeaway after this conversation.
Yeah, I think if you've listened to this whole interview, and I'll put that link to that checklist in the description below, but if you've listened to this interview very carefully, I think you have a really good sense of what Songtrust does for people, and you can now go to their site with less confusion and know really what you're reading, because I think we've really broken it down here. Three last questions I want to ask. Let's say I've got songs in the catalog with Songtrust. I have a library who wants them exclusively. Is there a way to take them down?
You can. So we have our support team. If there's ever songs that you want to remove from your account, you reach out to them. They can pull it down. Another great thing that I don't think I have mentioned about Songtrust is we are non-exclusive. So if you have songs registered with a different publisher or a publishing administrator, you can still register the remainder of your catalog or any new works with Songtrust. So you do not have to register your entire catalog with us if you choose not to. Or if there's specific songs that you are signing an exclusive, sync deal with, right? You could just not register those songs with
Sure. Yeah.
Songtrust, or you can reach out to our team to have them remove them from your account.
In that way, it works just like your PRO. You only work with the songs that they register. And also, how long does the takedown take? Is it a week-long process, month-long process, or?
It's pretty quick. Our support team typically gets back to you 1 to 2 weeks after you submit a request to them. So yeah, it's a pretty quick process.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And if after a couple of years you decide, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I mean, it doesn't sound like, unless you just want everything back, I guess people can do that. They can quit and get everything back if they decide to.
Yeah, we have a very flexible cancellation policy, I guess. We have a 1 year term. So when you sign up,
1 year
uh,
term. Okay.
yep, 1 year term. It just auto renews after that. So if you don't reach out to us, we'll just continue collecting on your behalf. If you do decide to cancel after that year, you reach out to us, let us know. There's typically a 1 year post-term collection period. So, after you cancel, we'll still continue to collect on your behalf. And that's really because by the time societies, collect royalties and send them through, things kind of get backed up a little
Sure,
bit.
there's some
So
time.
we just,
Yeah.
yeah. So that post collection period, 1 year, and then you can work with another
But
publisher, admin.
but still, it's not really like you're locked in for a year. You don't have to. First of all, you can register the songs you want to or not. Second of all, you can take songs down. So nothing is perpetual here, and nothing is even you're not even locked in for a year because you can do takedowns. So
Yep.
that's really flexible. I think that's
Yeah,
extremely
absolutely.
flexible.
And we have a lot of clients who have decided to use Songtrust sort of as a stepping stone. Their goal was to sign a traditional publishing deal because they wanted some of the benefits that came with that. So, until they reached that point, they use Songtrust. Other clients, they have decided that they just want that full control and flexibility of their catalog, and, have decided to forego that traditional publishing deal.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Last question. Changeover and catalog switch over. I mean, if nothing changes at your PRO, nothing changes at MLC, you still have all those things registered there. It's just from the moment you join Songtrust, you are registering at Songtrust, so you don't have to register at all those places. But what is your catalog do you have a faster catalog process than one song at a time? What is your intake? What are your intake procedures, basically, I guess is what I'm saying. Especially for those of us who have hundreds and hundreds of songs versus, just a few.
Good question. So we have like a bulk import kind of situation for eligible clients. So, you need to have 30 or more works with ISRCs.
Mm-hmm.
You need to have, oh gosh, I think at least 1 million streams across the catalog. So there are a number of requirements. I'll have to double check those numbers.
Okay.
But yeah, typically it is, you add those songs that, you want us to administer manually within our portal, unless you meet some of these eligibility requirements. Yep.
Well, Renee, awesome. This has just been so awesome. You have cleared up every question I have had about Songtrust, because I hear people talking about Songtrust and I feel like I've just been getting secondhand information, which I have. And I just wanted to come to the actual company and say, tell me what you do. It's been something I've wanted for a couple years now. And it informs me how, if I want to join, how that works for me personally, but also I think everybody here can now kind of see, and I really appreciate you coming on and being transparent like this, and I think everybody else is as well. I think it's going to get you a lot of more signups. But if
wish
they
we had
want
this conversation sooner.
me too. I wish we'd had it 3 years ago. So if down below, I'll put the link to the checklist. Is there another page that I could put, or just the website basically, and they can find out how to join from there if they decide to join?
Yeah, I'll send you the music royalties checklists link, as well as the sign up link, if people feel like, I'm ready to get started.
Excellent. That'll be below. Well, Renee, thanks so much. You have been spot on today. Your information is perfect, and I studied for the test, but you did too. And so we both did, I think, a good job for really explaining what Songtrust does. And I thank you so much for coming on and being part of this.
Absolutely. Thank you again for having me.
So obviously, there are decisions to make. Will you join Songtrust? Do you need Songtrust? Are you interested in getting more royalties? Will you get more royalties? Are you willing to pay $100 to try and dig up more pennies and dollars around the world for your music? Shoot, I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to use Songtrust. And so there's going to have to just be a whole other video on this, because I got to get into how Content ID works. I've already talked with Identify and Songtrust and trying to figure out the Content ID thing and how that works, because I've got 200 songs in Content ID, But I would love for Songtrust to take those songs and go turn over rocks and find more performance and mechanicals for me on those songs. Also, I kind of have to work out in my head how this is going to work with them and my PRO, and if it's going to save me time with registrations. We have to go through all of this. So this is going to be another video, so make sure you like this video and subscribe below. So stay tuned to this channel. I'll have more updates on Songtrust. I hope this has been enjoyable. Make sure you get the free stuff down in the description, and we'll see you later.